everyone. Can you see me? Can you hear me as well? So some of you are already there. Very well. So will you please write on the chat if you can hear me and see me and... So I'm already, okay, hi. Okay, yes, you can see me. Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for being there. I can see that, yeah, oh my God, the chat is crazy, yes. Okay, so I'm super excited to be here. I'm really excited that you're all joining from so many places. So while we wait for everyone to hop in, why don't you just write on the chat, where are you joining from? So some people are joining from Vienna. Oh my God, this is going really fast. Colombia, people from Brazil living in Japan. I know that this, this time is very late in some places super early. Rio de Janeiro, hi everyone from Spain, from Germany. So Guatemala, Argentina, oh my God, from Dublin. I'm super excited to have you all here. I try to find a place in the day where we can actually meet. I know that in some places very early, in some places it's super late, but I really appreciate that you're all there and that you're joining for this lettering masterclass. So let me just tell you a little bit about what is going to happen today. This is, we're going to have this lettering masterclass. I'm going to essentially share a presentation with you with a lot of tips and, a little bit about my process and also a little bit about myself. And because I feel that the way the things happen in my way with letters has had a lot of impact in my work and the way I teach. So my presentations or my classes have a lot to do with that, and also with pure information about, what you need to do better lettering and to create letter shapes. So I'm going to do this masterclass. It's going to last around 60 minutes. And by the end of the class, I'm going to take a time to answer your questions. So if you come up with questions along the way, I will just recommend you to write them down, and you can ask them at the end of the class. So that will be the place for everyone to say, like, hey, I have a doubt, or how can I do this or that? And I can address those questions all together at the end. So while the chat is going crazy, people are joining from India, from Italy, from Canada, from England, Rotterdam. This is so amazing. Mexico, this is great. Portugal. So with no further ado, I hope everything goes well with the technical equipment. We had a little bit of a last minute thing, but I hope everything will go well. So I'm going to start with the presentation now. Let me see if I forget about something. That's it. So let me just share the presentation with you. Oh, the chat is going crazy. So as I said, for those that are joining now, so hold on, I'm trying to share the presentation with you now. So I'm going to do a 60-minute class, and at the end, I'm going to answer to your questions. So if you have questions along the way, just save them for the end. So all of the questions. So let me share this with you. So this is my first time doing a live stream. So I'm a bit nervous. I'm a bit nervous about how this is gonna go. So if you agree, let's start. So hello everyone, this is the lettering masterclass. So this masterclass is thought for actually for a lot of different profiles. If no matter where you are in your way with letters, no matter if you're an advanced letterer or if you have been doing lettering for a long time or you just started with it, this class from this class. No matter, I bet that a lot of things that you will see throughout this class will perhaps give you a lot of information and understand, to understand the world of letters. And if you are an experienced letterer, you will just rethink a couple of things, or maybe incorporate some of the tips I give you throughout the masterclass in your own work. So some of you already know, some of you don't know, but happening in the frame of the release or the launch of the lettering seminar. The lettering seminar is my latest course, and I have been launching this seminar for the past month. So my team and I have been working on this course, and I'm not gonna speak about this now. I'm gonna share some details about it at the end of the class. But just for those that haven't heard about it, I just want to let you know that this lettering masterclass is a little bit of an introduction to what the lettering seminar is. So welcome everyone. So let's start by defining a little bit what lettering is about. When you create a lettering piece, what you do is to basically give shape to the language. And what I really find interesting about creating lettering is that the content, so the text and the shape of that text are counterparts for the same message. So I can be very sweet when I speak about love. And I can be, I can say my favorite bad word in a very delicate way. And I can tell you how a product feels on your skin. I can speak really, really loud. And by shaping these letters, I can tell you stories, right? So by shaping those letters, I can tell you stories. So hold on there a second. I have someone here with me, helping me with all the technical stuff. He's going to tell me, he's Elias. He works here in the studio full time. And so the image of, they can hear me, but the image of the presentation is frozen. So now you can see the money issue. Okay, and if I switch, you can see now the cover of a book. Okay, can you see that now? It goes with a little bit of black, but your miniature is frozen. Yeah. Okay, so wait, let's go back. Oh, no. Let's go back to try to so now can you see this cover of the Rival Queens? Elias, can you see this cover of the Rival Queens? Okay, so let me just go back and try to hide this. I'm gonna try to restart this, reload. See me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, you can hear me. Okay, that's great. So I'm gonna share my screen. And I'm gonna go back to the show in stream. Okay, here I am. I'm gonna take my image out of the picture. show on stream. So, can you guys see me? Can you guys see me now? So I'm gonna try to go back to it. So I have Elias here. He's helping me to sort of figure out how to get this to you. Now I hope this works. Thank you so much for being patient with me and for sticking around. So it doesn't matter if my image. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and hide my image. Doesn't really matter if I'm the Can you hear me? Okay, cool. I'm gonna try this once again. I'm so sorry that this is okay. I'm gonna share the screen with you, and I'm gonna play the presentation. So can you see show in stream? So can you see now the Rival Queens cover? Are you able to see it now? Okay. Can you see this? I cannot see the chat, but perhaps Elias can tell me if he can see the... Yeah, you can see this. It's all good? Okay, awesome. Good. So what a reader will expect from this cover is rather different from the previous cover, right? So the shape of those letters set the tone for that message. Of course, there's other things that have to do, that have a say in this composition, the illustration and the color scheme. But the letters in lettering, the letters are the heart. I cannot help to find awkward when someone says that, lettering is the new thing, because it's really been there for a long time. You just have to look around and, raise your head. There's letters that tell you how cool and modern a car is, at least, back in the 50s. There's letters that speak that speak about the importance of a place, and they fit their application. There's letters that are made with whatever they have in hand. In this case, is tiles. But lettering has been there telling us stories for a long time. I don't know if any of you have read my recent blog posts, but I posted this image of boulangerie. So I posted this storefront in France, and I think what is great about this sign is that by looking at the sign, I can almost picture the bread they make. You know, I can picture the baker using beautiful, really nice ingredients, and taking care of each bun. And I can picture a very neat kitchen there. You know, the same way that the artist that created this design put so much attention to the serifs, to to painting each one of these letters. This sort of reflects the importance they give to the product they make, right? So by looking at this sign, I can already imagine how that bread tastes. And I think that's the power of lettering, to communicate much more than the literal meaning of the words. So, by looking at this sign I just showed you, they were probably, the person who did this was probably working a very different way than we do nowadays. However, all of us that work with letter shapes, or that works either in type design or in lettering, we all work within the same system, within the same universe. So let's start by the basics of letter design. So, in letter design, we essentially work with the alphabet. So the alphabet is a system of shapes. So in the alphabet, we have rectangular shapes. So if I tell you that in this group, there is the shape, there is the letter H, which other letters can you find here? You can write on the chat, but think letters that have straight horizontal and vertical lines. So the H, the I, the E. If you have the E, what do you have? The F, the L. So all these letters are sort of the rectangular shapes of the alphabet. So they're all friends. If you look at them, they all have a relationship in shapes and also the features. So these serifs, they show up in very similar places. If you look at the E and the F is almost like an E without the feet, right? So you also have the rounded shapes in the alphabet. So the rounded shapes, which are the rounded shapes? Write on the chat. Which are the rounded letters? It's very obvious. The O, the C, the Q. There's very few in this group. And there's the group of the triangular letters, right? So think of the triangular letters that have diagonals only. So the A, the V, the W, and the X, of course. So these are the three basic groups of letters, right? And you can very well understand what's the relationships within those letters. You can see that the A and the V are like mirrored shapes, right? Now, once you recognize these overall shapes that are within our alphabet, you can then take information from one group and the other and combine it into new shapes. So, for instance, if I want to combine information from the group of the rectangular shapes and information from the group from the rounded shapes in one letter, which letters can I create? Think of letters, and write on the chat, think of letters that have a straight stem and letters that have a curve, so they have a bump somewhere, right? So try to think of those letters and try to identify them in the alphabet. So I'm sure you're saying the D, I'm sure you're saying the P, the B, right? The J, look at the U, is also a straight shape with a curve, right? So I'm not gonna go deep into it. I just wanted to show you how, by understanding this system, you can then build all the rest of the letters, right? And understanding the alphabet as a system is super important, because if my drawing has straight shape, so it has shape, so it has an H or an I have enough information to build an E and a T, right? So the system allows me to sort of design those letters together. If my design or my drawing has rounded shape or an O, for instance, there in the middle on history, you have enough information there to create a G, a D, a C, right? If my drawing has an A, I have enough information to create a B, and to use that information to then later combine it in an M or an N. And that not only happens with the uppercase letters, it also happens with the lowercase letters. And it's not only about, let's say, the basic shapes, but it's also about the features of those letters. So look at this example, for instance. Look at the terminals of the capital S in comparison with the swash of the G or the terminal of the N, right? Those are features. Those are sort of related features. But even have a look at the P and the G. They're clearly mirrored shapes, right? So this system underlays all of our letters, and understanding that system is already a big part of what is working with letters. So it's not only about the shapes themselves when you work with letter shapes, or when you design shapes, or when you design letter forms, but it's also about the space around them, right? The letter shapes is not only about the substance itself, but it's also about, the space within and between the letters. So we call it spacing to the space between the letters. And as an overall rule, we say that the space within the letters is similar to the space between the letters. So if I can put a liter of water inside the N, I should be able to put a liter of water between the N and the next letter, right? So that's already like a good way of like understanding also how spacing works. It's not a geometrical block. It's more like water that goes, in between the shapes and gets into the little corners, right? So spacing is one of the things we work with when designing letters. There's also contrast, and we call contrast to the difference between the thinnest part of your letter and the thickest part of your letter. So if that difference is very high, we call that a high contrast. And if that difference is very low, we call that low contrast. So a little game here. What would this be? Write on the chat. What would this lettering piece be? Is high contrast, low contrast? I want to look at your answers. So, low contrast. Very good. So what would that be? The best, the word's best. Is that high contrast, low contrast? Write on the chat. Think about the difference between the thickest and the thinnest part of the letter. So is this is high contrast, definitely, because the thinnest and the thickest part of the letter are relatively different. And this is a tricky one. What would that be? Would that be low contrast, high contrast? I know it's a tricky one. So this is high contrast. I know it's created with low contrast or with monoline, but overall the shape of those letters are high contrast. The last concept I want to speak about is the concept of contrast. So we spoke about mother shapes, we spoke about spacing, we spoke about contrast. Now I would like to speak about proportions. So there's letter shapes that have optimal proportions. And, to speak about proportions, I always like to compare letter shapes with the human body. So there's letter shapes that have optimal proportions. There are letter shapes that have a shorter upper part and longer legs. There's letters that have longer upper parts and shorter legs. And this goes on and on and on. So by altering those those proportions, you can achieve very unique results, right? So all these things that I just mentioned, the proportions, spacing, mother shapes, contrast, these are all essential foundations of letter design that we as letters or lettering makers or letter designers, we alter to achieve unique results. So no letter will look the same than other because we tweak those proportions, or we make that contrast higher or lower, or these are the parameters we work with when creating letters. These are our ingredients, let's say. So I learned all this when I studied type design. I was born in Argentina. I'm a graphic designer. I originally studied graphic design, and I worked many years as a graphic designer. And at some point, I moved to the Netherlands to study type design. So this is me during that time. I took a year off to just study type design, and that was a great experience to me. That was a tipping point in my life. During that experience of studying type design for a year, where I could explore a lot of different ways of creating letter shapes. That was my working space in The Hague, and I created letter shapes with a lot of different techniques. I created fonts, and I created letter shapes by programming, by coding. I practiced a lot of calligraphy. I even did a stone carving. So I used a lot of different ways of creating letter forms. And this was one of my first official lettering pieces at that time. And that having that experience, having those foundations were essential for me to get there where I wanted to be with letter creation. Really understanding how the world and the universe of letters work in a complete way sort of set my creativity free afterwards. I thought I understood the rules, and I understood how the game was, and I could play the game, and of course there was a lot of things I needed to learn after this, but I felt that I understood what I was working with, and that was so essential in the way in my life, because after that experience, I just stopped doing any graphic design. I mean, I have nothing against graphic design, but I actually said, like, well, I'm gonna just do lettering from now on. And I felt I had the tools to actually do it. So that changed my life so much, that all the workshops and classes that I teach are made with this goal in mind, to provide this information, to provide solid education in letter design. So it's not so much about the way I do it or how pretty I do it, but it's about passing through this information, and of course sharing all the things I have learned throughout the years of work in the industry, because this had also an impact in the way I work and in the way I create letter shapes. But I always try, when I teach lettering, I always try to pass this information, because it was so foundational and so life-changing to me, that I feel that I need to share this. So after studying type design, I decided to move to Berlin, and it was such a life-changing experience that I decided to move to Berlin and to pursue a career as a lettering artist. And it wasn't until I moved to Germany that I understood the importance of my work, because I could see how letter shapes affect the way we perceive our surroundings. I couldn't speak any word of German when I moved to Germany. I couldn't speak the language at all. I couldn't understand, the signs on the streets. I couldn't understand the products I was eating. I couldn't communicate with a lot of people, and those were really challenging times. But it was very interesting for me to discover that actually the shape of the letters or the shape of those messages that were around me, even when I couldn't speak the language, I could sort of understand what they were trying to say. So I could understand, for instance, in this sign, I could understand the places, or I could understand that in this place, tradition was important. I could see when someone was trying to give me an indication, and in this case, I would say like, well, I won't go ahead, or I won't go in. And I could see when something was so important that I was meant to stay there forever. I call this one sausage lettering, and interestingly, this store sells sausages. So the shape of those letters help me understand my surroundings and give context to the things. So that was a very very interesting discovery for me. An interesting discovery for me to understand that this thing I had chosen to work within, I had chosen to to pursue a career in lettering. This was actually something that could enable a lot of people to understand their surroundings, people like me, to understand their surroundings and change the perceptions of the things, right? Because in a way, designing the shape of a language of the language and designing the shape of a word change the perception of that word. And I feel that is super powerful of what we do. So when I decided to move to Berlin, there were a lot of things that I had to take care of, but I decided to pursue a career as a lettering artist. So one of the first things I did was to clean up my website from all the things that I had done and I didn't want to do anymore. And I also printed new business cards so I could introduce myself as a lettering artist. But during this time, I had a lot of challenges, actually. I had to find new clients, and I had to also find ways to work with lettering. I had no experience at working with clients and lettering and how to show them my ideas. So I think one of the biggest challenges for me at working with lettering was not necessarily creating the lettering itself, but actually working commercially with it. I remember the first commission I had for a big a magazine in the UK. It was one of the first commissions where I would have like the artwork that I would create would have a lot of exposure. So I got the brief. I was very excited because I was assigned with this. So I got the brief, I got the information, and I went directly to work. I worked 3 days straight on this design. So by the time I showed this design to the art director, I was 1 day away from the deadline. So thank God the art director liked it, because I wouldn't have made it to the deadline if she would have not liked it. So I had dedicated so much time to create this artwork in my computer that if they would have said, they would have had a lot of changes, or if they wouldn't have liked my concept, I would just have messed it up with that client. So after this assignment, I thought I need to change the way I work with clients. I need to figure out a new process where I could test my ideas and at the same time, be able to, test my ideas with the client, and at the same time be able to work with the design, incorporate feedback, and deliver the work on time. So this is when I started right after this assignment, which thank God was successful, and it was published and everything was good. After this assignment, I started working with sketches, with very rough sketches. And I like to tell this story because this is a very interesting story about how sketches can be life-saving in some process. I know that nowadays we don't use sketches anymore, especially in graphic design or in visual disciplines. We just go directly on the computer. It seems easier, and I see a great value at using sketches, because they can really be a great tool for your own process. So in this assignment, I was assigned to do this headline with a very quick turnaround. So I had to create this headline in 3 days, and the idea was that I created the headline with a sort of ribbon typography direction. So I got the information, the brief, and I went straight away to create this sketch. I sent it to the art director. She came back to me and she said, "We love it. This is the direction. However, this is not the text. The text that you have to illustrate, or that you need to illustrate, is those 3 words up there." So I had spent hours illustrating those, or a few hours illustrating those 25 words, and actually I had to illustrate those 3 words. So, and for someone that works essentially with letter shapes, I work essentially with text, and this is my work. And I consider that, the only thing that I have to get right is the text. So I came back to this art director and I said, "I'm really sorry. I totally messed up. I will send you a sketch right away." And I could, within 2 hours, send this new sketch with the right text. She could give me feedback, and everyone was happy. And I could go on and finish the final artwork after that, right? So actually using sketches really saved that assignment and the relationship with that client, right? So this leads me to speak about sketching letter forms, because it's very essential, or a very important part in the way I work and in the way I also teach. So let me show you a little bit about the process I use to create designs or artwork. And I bet this can be also, some of you might be using this process, or for some of you it might be like, okay, this is something I could actually try, and maybe it works for me. So I normally start by creating little thumbnail sketches. Why do I do this? Like, the thumbnail sketches are for me. I never show this to a client. So a client will never see my thumbnail sketches because they are normally super messy. There's a lot of directions. If you look at this sketch, the thumbnail sketches, the first one is a direction of like Roman typography with a curved baseline. The second one is Roman typography, lowercase, uppercase, with decorative elements. And the third option is script lettering or cursive lettering, right? So, and normally the process has a lot more of these thumbnail sketches. So these thumbnail sketches are for me, are to sort of figure out what do I want to do, which direction I want to take, and what is the best way of telling this story, right? If I want to speak about awesome, what is the best way of speaking about awesome? Is it something that looks a little bit more steady, like a Roman typography, or something that is more, let's say, emotional or spontaneous as cursive lettering? So in this case, I move forward with the cursive lettering direction with the third option. And what I normally do, once I decide the direction, what I normally do, I take this into a bigger size paper. So I move on to creating a very rough sketch. So this is really, really rough. This sketch it should be like my first big sketch is like done in 1 minute, right? This first sketch is not about creating something beautiful and working on the detail of that A and solving the stroke ending of that E. It's about the overall picture. So it's about understanding how my composition is. And later on, in using layers of tracing paper, I use layers of tracing paper. I often also use the iPad because it provides also this function of using layers. So you can also use, you can use the tool that you feel comfortable with. I use pencil because I just like it, but you can actually achieve the same result with any other tool. So I normally use a pencil, and I use these layers of tracing paper or transparent paper to work on top. So I sort of create layers of improvement, and you can see how the drawing develops, right? Until I get to a sort of polished kind of drawing, or kind of a drawing where I solved most of the issues, right? So this is what I want with my drawing, with my first drawing, is I want to solve most of the issues for what's coming afterwards. I'm gonna speak about what's coming afterwards later on, about the digital process of the creation of lettering. But I think what is great about working with sketches is that you move so fast. Like once you have the practice of using hand sketch and using your hands to draw, you can move so fast. You can create and try a lot of different things. If you look at those I'm just gonna go back. If you look at this sketch, you can see that I tried different stroke endings here. So you can see the stroke endings here are kind of rounded, and then on the next one I'm already cutting those and making them sharp. So in the sketch is so fast. It all moves so fast. It almost doesn't cost anything to try different things, and that's what I think is a good attitude as a creator, that you just try stuff and you just take the lead of, if you found something on this drawing or on this layer, you just take that lead and you bring it to the next layer. So I'm very passionate about working with sketches, I can see, but if you are working with sketches, I would like to give you some tips about how to proceed when working with sketches. So first of all, work on the composition. So what I mentioned before. So try to first figure out your composition, right? Try to look at the overall picture and not focus on the details in the beginning. Just not in the beginning. So a little tip of mine to create balanced compositions is that I think of the compositions as something that have a north, a south, an east, and a west. So if there's something going on in the north, so look at this composition, there's this F at the top and it has some swashes over there. What is there going on in the south that sort of compensates that? So if you see that V has an extra swash over there to sort of compensate how busy the composition is at the top. And if there's something going on in the west, so look at the west is kind of this end swash of the back of the F. And if that's going on in the west, what can I do on the east that sort of compensates that? So if you look at the E, it has this extra swash at the top that is sort of compensating those swashes on the left of the composition, or on the west of the composition. So think of these cardinal points. So north, south, east, west, and that will give you the key of where do you need to add more stuff or take out more stuff. So be nasty with your work. If you see a mistake, or get nasty, I don't know how but don't leave anything behind. If you see a mistake, try to change it. When you're sketching, it doesn't cost much. It really moves very fast. So try to find a new solution for that. Move fast. So what I was just mentioning, when you're drawing your sketches, your first drawings, move fast. Try to not to focus on the details early on, but rather at the end of the process. So in the very beginning, try to move fast. The first sketches, so the first sketch on the left, these are the very first sketches. This should be very rough, very fast, made very fast. Towards the end of the process, which is the piece on the right, you will work on polishing those shapes, on deciding how those stroke endings will look. Again, the first sketch, very rough. The last sketch, a more polished sketch, a more, So in the beginning, you work very fast. At the end, you work slower. And this is something I cannot focus on enough. Don't fall in love with single letters. So don't spend too much time drawing that N, because you don't know if it's gonna go with that O that is coming right after. So don't just focus on one single letter, but try to look at the overall composition, right? So those are some of the tips to, when you are sketching, try to focus on that. So let's go to move on to the process of going from analog to digital. So digitizing your sketch. So I actually, if you haven't seen the work I do, all the results, or all my artwork is digital, but there's a reason behind it. There's a reason why I actually ultimately take those drawings into a digital or a vector drawing. And that is that the vector drawing gives you a control over your shapes that no other tool gives you. So the vector drawing actually allows you to decide exactly how you want that O to look, how that E swoosh should look. And I think that's, it's one of the things I really enjoy about letter design, that you sort of like shape that letter in the way you want. And the digital drawing sort of allows you to do that. So what I normally do when I have a sketch is that I take it into a vector drawing program and I start plotting points. I use a technique that is called the extreme points technique. Maybe some of you more advanced letters know about it or heard about it. But I think what is great about this technique is that it gives you total control, full control over your shapes, and that's all you want when you're working with letters. And the thing with the technique is that I also work very fast, as you can see. The thing of this technique is that it allows you to use as few points as you can. So you have to edit very few points to get your shapes right. And I know many of you that use Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, or any other vector drawing program, I know that you might be thinking like, hey, but you can, import that drawing and then use this auto trace function, the one that turns it into like a lot of points. And there you go. You have like your vectorized sketch. But actually, this in the language of a lettering designer is hell. This is really, there's so many points that you have no control here. Like you cannot edit any shape, you cannot change any shapes. And what you want when you're working with letters is to have that control. So that digital drawing gives me that chance that I can, do subtle change. So look at this image and look at the one that's coming right next. can you see those little details, those little adjustments? So focus, for instance, in the connection between the W and the E. So you can see before and after. Like you can see how that sort of, looks fluent. So this is what I find great about this process, that you can really take control over your design. And then comes the finishing touch. So the digitalization is not everything there. Like we went through techniques to sketch and to tips to get the best out of your sketch. Also, we went over this digitalization and how can you continue polishing those shapes in a digital environment, because this is ultimately what you achieve with the vectorizing technique, that you want to continue polishing your sketch and your drawing and always get better. So now in the finishing touch, of course, the drawing keeps on developing, and you keep on adding layers of improvement to your design. So the finishing touch is also about adding color, and I like to show this example because the color is so essential for your storytelling. The color is everything. This is an example of this is a headline I created for a magazine, and the word Gelassenheit in German means serenity, right? So in this case, the composition, this kind of very orderly composition and the headline at the top and the color scheme really speak about serenity, right? But the same design with the same layout and a different color scheme speak about something totally different, right? And this is just by changing those colors. So really the color and the finishing of your drawing has a big impact on the storytelling of your lettering. And what I normally do, I know that, color is a huge topic and I don't want to take this lightly. So like some hints to find a color scheme that I find very useful for my own work is to go out there and try to find color schemes that are already done, and if you go to nature, there you'll find a lot of color schemes. If you go to photography, you will find a lot of color schemes that are already there. You just need to extract them and use them in your drawing. So in this case, I was clearly creating something that has, autumn, the word autumn. So I went to look for images or imagery of autumn. This is the garden of my previous studio. So I took a picture of that and I extracted those colors and I used them in my composition. So for adding color to this composition, when I think of awesome, I kind of think of this image. And I extracted the color scheme of that image and I used it in my design. So basically, the finishing has to do with adding layers of storytelling to my lettering. If I want it to look awesome, then it will have highlights and it will have a 3D effect, it will make it pop. I will add a texture and I will add a color scheme that also speaks about something that has a lot of energy and is super awesome. No? And I think one of the biggest challenges of digital lettering is that, or any digital art, is that at the end it doesn't look so digital. I think that's perhaps the downside of digitizing things. You gain a lot of control over your shapes and your design, but at the same time, your design could look a little bit too cold or lose a little bit of that handmade feeling of the sketch. So by the end of the process, of the digital process, it's all about trying to add this sort of tactile effect to your drawing. So for this, I normally use textures. And I use natural textures. So as you can see, this is a very kind of one-to-one use of natural things. You can use natural sceneries to add color to your digital drawing. You can use natural textures to add textures to your drawing. And ultimately, what you want is to bring some of that natural feeling to your digital drawing. So it makes a lot of sense to use natural things in your work. So these are some of the textures I have in my, gallery or folder of textures. And at the end of the day, the drawing is, or the artwork is, all of this together. It's the composition I found on the sketch. So that sketch was essential to understand how this was going to look. Then later on, how I polished those shapes in a digital environment or in digital vectors, and also how I added these textures and these effects and this 3D to make it look as something awesome, to contribute to create a piece that tells the story I want to tell. And this is the final design, and this is delivered to my son because I think he's awesome. So, I know that after this masterclass, or after looking at this at these tools, these are just some tools that I can provide you in 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes of time. But I think what is very, I bet that after today you will say like, oh yeah, I will start, using these techniques, and I will just go ahead and practice 1 hour a day. And you will decide to allocate 1 hour a day to actually practice. But I would say that, practicing is something that never really brings, or very often or very rarely brings a result, because the practice is something that you don't show to anyone and you keep for yourself. So instead of, getting better through practice, or practicing your skills with lettering through practicing, I rather get better at making. So all these techniques that I learned throughout the way, and I learned by studying, I try to apply them in projects. So it doesn't really make anyone's life better if I, create a sketch that says I love you, but it does if I create a sketch that says, if I create a postcard that says I love you and I send it to someone. So this is the idea behind one of my side projects called Letter Collections, where I send 100 postcards to friends and family and celebrities, people that I liked. I just send them by snail mail. So I sent a postcard to Tim Burton, which is a film director that I really admire. I sent this card to Ringo Starr because I feel that, the world has been really unfair with Ringo from the Beatles, who he is. And I sent this card to Lionel Messi because I just think I just admire someone that is great at what he or she does, right? But, in this project, I didn't only send postcards to celebrities or, people I admire, but also to friends and family, and even to my own baby before he was born. But, ultimately what kept me going was this little, a lot of people were coming back to me and telling me like, hey, I received your card. It was really nice. It made my day. So this little feedback from this silly project that I had that no one cared about actually had an impact. And this kind of feedback kept me going for the next one. So that's why there's a difference between, practicing and creating something, because creating something is something that has an impact in the world and ultimately has, it keeps you motivated. So what you need is a brief. So to make something, you need a brief. You need to know who are you gonna send, or in my case, I knew who I was gonna send this, and I knew who I was creating this postcard for. you need to have a deadline. So the truth is that it will never be finished. So you need to know when you're finished with it, even if it's not finished. And you ultimately have to share it. Share it on your website, on a blog, through a snail mail, but you need to show it to the world and believe that it's actually real. So, and I know that once you have discovered, your love for lettering, or you are interested in lettering, the biggest challenge is to get better, to get, there where you want to be with your lettering practice. And I know myself that I have been there, like trying to, learn things from here and there, and watching tutorials and, hearing what he says or she says, and trying to put that together. And I know how hard it can be to understand all these sources of information. And this is a little bit the idea behind the lettering seminar, or the concept behind the lettering seminar. And if you allow me, I hope you are okay if I tell you a little bit about what the lettering seminar is about. And after this is just a 2-minute thing. I can go out and answer your questions. I know you have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna stay there to answer the questions. But I wanted to really show you or tell you about this project. We have been working with my team for so long. The lettering seminar is a project that started here in my studio. I teach workshops forever, since 2010. And in 2016, we started to create, this lettering seminar where we actually put all these techniques that I told you a little bit about in this masterclass, but also this concept of, making stuff. And we put that together in a program that lasted some days here in my studio in Berlin. And this last year, we decided to make it available for everyone worldwide, because we know that not everyone can travel to Berlin, and not everyone is able, to fit in my studio as well. So we decided, we saw that there was such a big transformation in the people that was coming, and we thought, like, we need to do this available for a lot of other people. I've seen students like really thrive after this seminar, either because they got tools that it was very useful for them, and they could use for their creative work, or because it also got them, gave them the extra motivation. So I think something important about this seminar is that my workshops are not about my work. I know that I teach, and when you teach or you share something, perhaps the other person is trying to absorb the way you do things, but they're seriously not about my work, but about what the student or you need to create better lettering. So I always say that any of the techniques I share, they need to go through your own process and figure out yourself what of this is useful for you. So let me go quickly through the content of this seminar, because it's a great class. It's just the most complete workshop I have put together so far. So first, it speaks about, storytelling, and gives you like a lot of ideas of what you can do with your lettering and all the applications you have for your lettering. I take you out with me on the streets of Berlin, and we analyze signs of vernacular lettering to sort of train our typographic eye. Of course, the basics of letter design are there. When I spoke about foundations and all the things you need, understanding the system, understanding the universe of letter, understanding the game and how to be able to play it. So that's there. Of course, we speak about calligraphy and how that impacts letter shapes. There's a very exciting module or unit about lettering styles and how to approach them. So every letter style, I would say most useful lettering styles, I would say, or most common, like black letter and brush lettering and script lettering. And there's even one about ribbon lettering, sans serif, serif, you name it. We speak about composition and embellishment, sketching letter forms. So how to approach a sketching technique and how this can be useful for you. How to go from analog to digital. What I just show you, this technique of like taking control over your curves, that's there. The finishing touch, how to get your work polished or your final artwork polished. And there's also an interesting chapter at the end, or unit at the end, that is about what's next. That is a lot more about mindset, or what's the mindset you need to have to get to the next level. So it helps you understanding how to improve your work and also how to set standards for your own work. So the entire seminar is coming with a student workbook that we created here in the studio. You have lifetime access to the seminar. You have, of course, access to the future updates. And if you didn't like this seminar, I know you will love this seminar, but if you didn't like it, you can send us an email and we will give you your tuition back. So the seminar is officially open for enrollment right now. So you can go to thelearningseminar.com and it will be open for enrollment for 1 week. So I recommend you to get your spot now. As I said, I'm really excited about this class. This has been a great undertake for our entire team, and I really put everything, a lot of the things I know in this seminar, and I use like the polish method, or the method I polish throughout all these seminars we already hosted. I put it on this online class. So now I'm gonna go on to answering your questions. Let me just switch. Let me see if you're still there. Let me just hide this. Let me see. Let me know if you can see me now. So let me know if you can see me. I'm here now to answer all of your questions. I got one question per email. Some of you were asking, because I know that some of you are more comfortable with other languages than English. So the entire course is in English, but we will be adding subtitles soon. The first one will be Spanish, and we will see how the demand is on other languages, but there will be certainly another language. And as I said, if you jump in the course now, you will get an update. You will get all the updates. So as the translation happens or the subtitles are added, you can access those subtitles as well. So the seminar is only in English. So let me just try to answer some questions. The chat is going really fast. How to point? I know. Okay. Let me see. What did you lettering in the Netherlands? Okay, I studied lettering. No, I studied type design in the Netherlands. It's different than lettering. I learned to do fonts. So I studied in the Royal Academy of Art. Yeah, that was great. How do you relax your arm after your practice? Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I always say that sketching is something we are not used to anymore. And often when someone comes to my workshops, they end up like with a cramp, not with a cramp, but they kind of feel that the hand is tired. And I know that many of you have this issue when practicing. At some point you feel you feel that your hand is tired, and that has a lot to do with the pressure you put on your hand. And I can assure you that in the very beginning, if you're not working with hand sketches, in the very beginning, it can feel very alien, and it can feel something that is not natural to you, but it's just because we're not used to. So keep on, always try to, like, my advice is always try to pay attention how your hand is. So always keep it relaxed. The more relaxed your hand is, the better you can draw, the better shapes you can get. The more relaxed your hand flows, the better curves you will achieve. So how do you get how do you get the idea customers and attract the right audience? How do you get the idea customers and attract the right audience? So that's a big question. I would say that the work you put out there it also reflects the kind of clients you will get. So the clients that will approach you will always approach you because they saw something in your portfolio that they find appropriate for what they're doing, and this is key. So the clients you get depend a lot on the work you put out there. So that's something, you have the control, and that's great. In which program do you digitize? I use Adobe Illustrator. Yeah. So what about pricing? They're asking about the seminar. So this seminar is happening in my own online classroom. So this this seminar will also have my support all along the way, in the sense that they will have updates, and it's more a course than a skill sharing of me, or a tutorial. It's a course where you learn concepts and you put them in practice, and I would say for those that are already, for all those that are already studied with lettering, this will give you a broader understanding of lettering, and it will also help you, get out of the common places, or the things you do often. Raise your hand if you, I don't know, you use the same lettering style every time. I used to, in the very beginning, I used to draw brush lettering all the time. I was solving every assignment, every project with brush lettering. And, brush lettering is not always the appropriate, even if you can do it very well, it's not always the appropriate style for a certain project. So this seminar really gives you a broader understanding of all the tools you need to, a full skill set for creating lettering. And if you are just getting into lettering, this will give you like a solid basis. So from this solid basis, you can then start playing the game of lettering. So someone asked me about pricing, and the pricing. So the full course is starting with $545, and there's a payment options for those. I know it's a big undertake for some, so you can also have installments, and there's also a couple of spots for one-to-one coaching with me, so we can have a session where I can give you feedback, direct feedback. So back to some. How do you plot the points? Oh, that's so technical. I use Photoshop. Do you use Photoshop too? Yes, I use Photoshop. So I think Illustrator, or the vector technique that I showed, is great to sort of plot the points on your drawing and to, control those curves. But I think Photoshop is a great tool to add all the tactile effects that I told you about, like all the textures and the brushes and, like little details. And so Photoshop is definitely a tool that you can sort of, add a lot of tactile effect to your artwork. A very good finishing. So how will you be holding a seminar in person in Berlin? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like this year's seminar was canceled because of COVID-19. So, how do you research on this historical or cultural context of each script styles? Is there a type specimen book but for script? That's an interesting question. So, well, in the seminar, we speak a lot about this, like how to approach a new style. And we speak also about script lettering and how to approach also inspiration and how to go to the sources of something. Normally when I approach a new style, I try to figure out what the style is about. Like, what are the origins of that style? Is that a calligraphic style? Is that something inspired in calligraphy? Is that something inspired in wood type or mechanical type? So I try to go to the sources and try to, research a little bit about this, find inspiration and find resources. And then I try to understand that system. When you, the same way that we spoke about the system of the simple shapes, you can also find systems on alphabets. So I normally look at specimen books because they show you the system. Specimen books are those books that present a certain alphabet or a certain, there's also, for instance, in calligraphy manuals, you have models to do calligraphy in a certain style. And you see how you can draw the A or write the A, the B, the C, right? So, and there you can see the system. I think it's very useful for you to understand what the system is. And afterwards, after you understood, try to customize this, like try to create your own shapes within that system, if that answers to your question. So that's how I will approach a lettering style, like looking for resources, understanding what I'm looking at, what the system is, and then trying to do my own shapes. So this is the seminar. You can also access, so they are asking me for seminar address. So this is, you can also use this other link that I'm just writing right here. So I'm just sharing there. That's my academy, academy.martinaflor.com, and you can access the lettering seminar right there. Let me see if you can see that bar just shifting through. How do you share? How do you decide what type of letters you're going to use, or how to mix that? How do you decide what type of letters you're going to use? That's a very interesting question because, I think in the class, in the masterclass, I told you, or I told you a little bit about this stage of the thumbnail sketches. So in the stage of the thumbnail sketches, I try to test very different styles. So I try to test like a Roman lettering, a script lettering, a fracture lettering. So I try to a brush lettering. So I try to see how those words react in very different styles. And I try to understand, okay, which one is getting the message out there? Which one is helping me tell the story I want to tell? And I think that's a very good exercise because you can, I always say that we know more about letters than we think we do. We know more about typography than we think we do. So if I show you a script lettering or a cursive lettering, it will definitely trigger things in your head that have to do with, the writing and the hand and emotions. You have in your head a library of typography and how that typography or those letter shapes can help you tell a story. So this is something you can use for your storytelling with lettering. And I don't know if I answered that question, but definitely choosing the right style for your message is one of the main things you need to do for getting the message out there and getting the right message out there. So this sketching technique with the very small thumbnail sketches in the beginning can be very useful for you to understand which one works better. But along the way, you will gain more experience and understand, okay, this style can help me to do this and that. The seminar actually speaks about this a lot, like what style can help you do what. No? So what do you think? What are you thinking about when you create ligature and flourishes? That's a very technical question, but I'm for the challenge. So when creating ligatures and flourishes, I normally try to I feel that it's more like a dance than something technical. There's definitely a logic behind it, and I have my own rules. I need 2 more hours to tell you about it, but I have my own rules for flourishes. But definitely there's something about letting your hand kind of dance in the paper, and it has a lot to do with the flow and to understanding which directions you want to go as you do on the dance floor. The same way with the hand. I think it's a little bit abstract what I'm saying, but there's definitely something about the natural feeling of the hand doing that flourish, and that's what I use personally when I create script lettering. So a few more questions. Do you use an iPad or touchscreen when digitizing? If so, which apps do you use? So I do use iPad especially when I'm traveling. I use it for sketching, but for digitizing, actually I normally use my laptop. And I recently tested one demo version of Illustrator on iPad, which is really great. I really liked it, but I think they haven't released it yet. But you can definitely use that tool. It's pretty intuitive. I think they are doing a good job there. For example, so Damiano asked me, which is your favorite and less loved step of a lettering process? So I think that I don't know how many of you have experienced drawing letters in vectors, but definitely there's, while the sketch moves super fast and it's very creative and you're using your hands and it's great, like it's a great feeling of creation. It's like a great creation process. The digital drawing can feel very stiff, very technical. And I think this is something that frustrates many designers or many makers, illustrators, when they are drawing letters in a sketch or by hand and they go onto a digital drawing, that they are like, I want to go back to the digital drawing. So there's definitely something in the digital drawing that is more technical. And we actually in the seminar, we teach this technique and we teach it like in depth. and what are the hacks and what are the best ways to do stuff and what are the best ways of making things look good. But I always say that, you need to get over that step of like starting with that technique, and after a while you notice that this technique is your friend, like is definitely there to solve all your issues. Even sometimes the way I plot my vector points in the drawing are, the vector points themselves. If I look at them, they are giving me hints or where should I put them so it will look better. So there's something very, it's like aligning planets in the universe. So the same happens with the vector points. Illustrator for iPad is the one I mentioned before, but it's not there. It's not out there yet. So let me see if I have more questions. So the seminar, someone asked me about the seminar. The seminar goes through a couple of, actually you can do it at your own pace, but it's over 50 lessons with exercises and your own project along the way. So I would say that you will need a couple of weeks to go through it. Do you use a pen tablet? Yeah, I use a pen tablet to draw. I actually use it as a mouse, so it's not like I do creative stuff and I do I actually use it as a mouse, so it's more ergonometric. Do you say that? How can you find balance when the style? How can you find a balance where the style doesn't hurt the readability? How can you find a balance where the style doesn't hurt the readability? I didn't get that question. I would love to answer that. It seemed interesting. How important do you think is to develop like your own style? For example, when someone looks at something that you did, they can recognize it's you that made it. That's a very, very interesting question, and I know many of you are seeking this. Like I know that many of you are like wondering, like, is this my style? Did I get to my style? Do I need to find my style? And especially with letter shapes, I cannot really say about like other disciplines, but I think with letter shapes, I always say that we are working with text, which is something. It's not only about illustration is a lot about the expression, like the artistic expression. But when you're working with words and you're working with text, you're actually putting out there a message. So, you need to like be accountable for that, and that's why it's like it's not so much about your style, but it's about that message. So it's very important that you can tell that or put out there that message in the right way, expressing the right thing. That's why, like, I always focus as a lettering artist, and I encourage other artists, lettering artists, to do that as well. That they they shouldn't worry so much about style, but more about mastering the creation of letter shapes in any shape, in any form that there is, so that you as an artist or as the creator of letters can use the shapes or create the shapes that help you put the message out there that you want to put, because the text, putting out their message is a big responsibility. So I think you have to have a very broad tool set, and you have to focus on improving that tool set to speak those words. I hope I answer your question. So bottom line, don't worry so much about style. That will go through, that will shine through at some point through your color scheme, through certain recurrent compositions. But I think it's very important that you try to improve your shapes as much as you can, or improve your tools skill set as much as you can. Extreme point technique. Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, in the seminar, do you teach how to vectorize and add 3D, etc. in the seminar? Yeah. So in the seminar, we have the digital part is very cool because we show how to digitize drawing, how to polish, make optical adjustments. We also show like hacks to do 3D things that before I was doing in a way that is like, oh my God, I'm taking 5 hours to do this volume on these letters, and I'm showing like a lot of shortcuts to do stuff. Yeah. So when you were a lot of people ask about the digital right now. So the digital drawing, you need to close your shapes. So let me see if there's another question here. So okay, great. So there's a few of you that are just starting with lettering right now. Thank you so much for the comments on the lettering masterclass. I really hope that this, provided you with some techniques that you will. Okay, someone asked me about the premium plan. So yeah, the premium plan is includes of the lettering seminar includes a 40-minute session with me where we get together and we speak about your project. I can give you hints on how to get better at this. I can also answer to any of your questions, like related to anything, like client work, your portfolio. So this is your hour where you you get to do all the questions you want to ask me, and I give you like personalized answers to that. And I can also give you personalized answer and feedback to your drawing or to your project. So good. Then I think we are gonna wrap it up. I really appreciate that you were here. I hope you check out the lettering seminar. As I said, I'm super excited to have finally launched this. And I'm also super excited to be here today with you. I really teaching is something I really love. I do since I started with this, and it's something I really enjoy, like being here, sharing stuff with you, and hopefully this will maybe contribute a little bit in what you're doing, the way you're creating stuff, the way you're doing lettering. So I hope this is something, you have a little bit of a takeaway from this lettering masterclass, and stay in touch with me through social networks on Instagram, and spread the voice about the lettering seminar. And I will send you a replay of this masterclass right after this. So thank you so much for being there. You have been great to me. Bye-bye, everyone.